I really can't stand Piers Morgan. I can't watch him. I can't listen to him. The guy just drips with fake insincerity, and he's a massive hypocrite. And conservatives and people on the right who might agree with his views, I don't think they're genuine. When he goes on about supporting free speech, I don't think he supports it at all. He's just a very slimy character. And as a former member of the British Armed Forces, I remember when he was the editor of left wing rag, the Daily Mirror, and they ran a story and printed photos of British soldiers allegedly mistreating Iraqi prisoners. It turns out they were all fake, and the damage that did was just incalculable. Because unlike the American soldiers in Iraq, the British soldiers were out there winning hearts and minds. We didn't shoot first and ask questions later. And I can speak from experience from my time in Optelic 4 and others that we went out of our way to befriend the locals rather than treat them like shit. And Piers Morgan's stunt in the Daily Mirror was just vile. Also, I'll never forget his treatment of Tommy Robinson when he came on to his GMB show a few years ago. Now, during the lockdown, Piers Morgan was one of the most vocal critics of people who were against the needle and the plague. I have to use code words here, but you know what I'm talking about. He was adamant that people should take the needle and stay locked up in our houses. Now, while we were all going through this, that bastard buggered off on a plane on holiday. And when people had had enough and were protesting in London, he tweeted this. It says, "Anti-lockdown morons are currently attacking police outside Downing Street, thus ensuring they'll be the only people in Britain definitely locked down. The intelligence of these people never ceases to impress." So he really put the boot into people who were questioning what was going on and what the authorities were placing upon us. Now, fast forward a year, and what is happening in China over the same issue is just a disgrace. The brutal communist dictatorship in China are enforcing the strictest lockdown rules ever upon its own people. And they've had enough, because this lockdown is on top of other harsh rules that the communist extremists in the Chinese Communist Party, the government there, have inflicted upon them. And this is, of course, along with their very unfair social credit system. And so it's only natural when people are oppressed like this that they rise up. And the Chinese finally have, and it's the first time they've done this since Tiananmen Square back in 1989, if I remember. And it's very brave of them to do this, because in China, if you speak up against the regime, you run the risk of going missing, executed, imprisoned for life, and those associated with you, they're also getting the same punishments. So it's proper medieval in China, despite the fact that it is 2022. Now, Piers Morgan, of course, jumping on this news, and I noticed the mainstream media as well have jumped on this news, and they're calling the Chinese rioters and protesters as inspirational. This is the same mainstream media in the West, especially here in Britain, who labelled people who weren't so keen on being locked down and were raising legitimate questions and concerns about the tests and the needles, etc. And Piers Morgan's tweet about it is in stark contrast to what he tweeted a year ago. Here he says, "Hard to overstate how remarkable and courageous this is." Now, I don't see the difference between oppressed people in China rising up against harsh, strict lockdown rules to the protesters here in Britain who are doing exactly the same thing. What's the difference? Is it because Piers Morgan and the mainstream media, well, those within the mainstream media who still do practice the trade of broadcasting the news and telling it as it is, have they finally seen the light, or is Piers Morgan just jumping on the bandwagon for some reason? I suspect it's the latter. But my view on this is both the Chinese rising up against the government and also the British people who did the same thing a year ago, they were all stunning and brave, remarkable and courageous. And I am glad that the Chinese people are finally wising up to the backward, harsh and strict commies that rule over them. And I really hope that they overthrow them and China becomes a democracy. Because I believe that China is another sinister state that's hell-bent on causing trouble in the world. And they should really be put into check. But whatever happens, Piers Morgan will always be a hypocritical, slimy son of a bitch. So there we go, that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. And until the next video, take it easy, have a great day, and Roger Trout.